Hello and welcome to The Menu, Monocle Radio's food and drink programme. I'm your host, Chiara Rimella. Coming up, we meet the trio behind London's Trullo to find out what makes a restaurant into a staple.
It's a balancing act and one that you have to be aware of every single day, and it's just constant evolution to try and tread that line as tightly as possible.
Also on the programme, we're rediscovering Finland's heritage recipes.
We always have had one of the best potatoes in the world because we are the most northest agricultural country in the whole world.
Plus, we're off to Bordeaux for a taste of its historic relationship with Britain. All that here on The Menu on Monocle Radio. Often in the studio, we meet chefs who are about to or have just launched a restaurant. But running a food business doesn't necessarily get any easier after the first few months, and there is a very specific skill to ensuring that a restaurant stays relevant, appreciated and successful for many years. Restaurateurs Team Siaratan and Jordan Frieda founded Trullo in North London in 2010 with Conor Gad in the kitchen. Today, they all co-own the business and have come a long way since their beginnings. Trullo was one of the restaurants pioneering a new way of eating in London back when it opened, and it has now firmly established itself as a staple in the capital's dining scene. But how does a restaurant achieve this status? The three co-owners join me in the studio to reflect on the years that were, the challenges at hand, and what lies ahead in the future.
Tim and I were talking earlier, and you said that really our only objective when we opened was to stay open, and when we were open for a year, that felt like a massive achievement.
Yeah, 6 months I remember being an achievement. But I think from, when we opened, firstly, we're older. So, 15 years has gone by. But the restaurant, it still looks the same. When I go in, I still walk in and it feels like it has the same energy as what, it started out as, especially on the ground floor. And, even the facade, it hasn't changed too much. We've got the bar next door now, but it's still familiar. It's still the intention. One of the big intentions for us when we opened it was we wanted a neighbourhood restaurant that was, that was going to be there for the community. Now, would we have thought we would have lasted 15 years? Probably not. We would have hoped and we would have dreamed that would have happened. But the idea of actually, landing here now, after, is I think we're all immensely proud of that. So, obviously has evolved and changed over the years, but the essence is still there, I'd say.
Yeah, the reason we opened Trullo was very, very simple. We, both of us initially, were massively inspired by two very important restaurants, probably the two most important restaurants in the UK in the last, however many years, certainly since I've been alive, the River Cafe and St John. We were lucky to work in both of them. Honourable mention to Morrow as well, where Tim also worked, with the two Sams, River Cafe, alumni and incredible chefs in their own right. And there was nowhere at that time in London that was cooking food in the way they were, where it was basically supplier driven. They weren't writing the menu until they talked to the suppliers. They were only using seasonal ingredients. No one was doing that at a lower price point. Morrow probably more than the other two. So when we came in, Tim's menu was using all those principles, but was priced like a good chunk below, certainly the River Cafe and St John, and probably below Morrow as well at the time. So the prices have definitely gone up. So that would be an obvious change. And in the early years, we were a small team. We were working long hours. It was a very different financial environment. But we've always been proud. This is a big part of what Conor's doing now, as well, is you can still come in and have a plate. Pasta's obviously always been a huge thing for us, right? Hence the evolution into the concept of padella for me and Tim. But you can come in and you can have a glass of wine and you can have a plate of pasta and it's super reasonable still. And that's, I guess, that's something that hasn't changed.
I'm really interested in the food kind of consistency aspect of it, in the sense that obviously you've said, the dining room hasn't changed very much in aspect or in looks. How beholden are you to keeping certain things as staples on the menu, and how important it is that the restaurant has this identity? We all know what the people come back for time and time again. So how much of a responsibility do you have to have, the great classic? And how much is it necessary to sometimes have the courage to go, do you know what, we're going to scrap it and we're going to move on?
It's a constant battle, to be honest with you, and it's one that took Tim and I in particular a long time to get right, and I'm still not sure if we have got it completely right. But a good friend of ours once threw away a comment years ago when having a conversation, and he just said there's nothing worse as a restaurateur than catering for an empty dining room. When you lose track of what it is customers come for, that's when you end up with an empty dining room. So you've got to understand the room. You know, I've told the story countless times about a pregnant lady on her due date crying at me at the pass because we didn't have our pappardelle beef shin ragu on. Fortunately, we had a couple of portions, so we were able to give it to her, and she then went into birth that night. But
I hope that the kid was called pappardelle in the end.
So we have to maintain that relationship with our diners, but we've also got to keep the young Turks in the kitchen interested by evolving. So it's a balancing act, and one that you have to be aware of every single day, you know, and it's just constant evolution to try and tread that line as tightly as possible.
Well, you've talked about the excitement of kind of the young chefs in the kitchen, but what about you? When you're working tirelessly on the same project for years and years and years, how do you yourself maintain the level of excitement and dedication? Because after sort of the initial burst of flame of having to get this project off the ground, it's a bit like a long-term relationship. Like, how do you keep it going?
Yeah, I mean, restaurants are, more like theatre than any other product, because, you can be great one night and you can be rubbish the next, and the key thing is consistency and doing it year after year, service after service. It takes a certain type of person to want to do that. The benefit is when it's over, and if it didn't go well, you've got a chance to put it right the next day. No one's sort of sitting around thinking about it for very long. But I mean, that's certainly our passion. The three of us, were working in Trullo together solidly for the first 5-6 years. I was. Then obviously Padella came along for us, and we've evolved since then. But I mean, that is, I would say, Connor's probably great talent in Trullo, in that he is unrivaled, in my experience, in keeping a band of young, creative people engaged and interested and hungry. And as an owner, that's your job. These young chefs and really talented front of house people, they've got a million opportunities. There are so many restaurants in London, so many good ones. And it's not, you can't pay enough to keep someone good there. They've got to feel engaged. I mean, wouldn't you find that? I mean, that's been, Trullo, I think, is as good now, if not better than it's ever been. And part of that is Connor, and Tim's ability to keep that kitchen stretched, to keep things evolving, to keep it interesting.
15 years isn't that long in a grand scheme of history, but in restaurant history, it's quite a long time. And I suppose you have already seen and weathered a number of changes in the way that London eats. But if you had to pinpoint a few, I suppose, moments in the history of what's happened in the last 15 years, and when you have been confronted with choices like that, like, should we go more in that direction or should we stick to our guns? How have you seen certain things come full circle? And I suppose it's a huge question, but one that I have to ask you. How has everything changed around you in these past 15 years?
There's lots of answers there, I'm sure, but I've got one, which is find your identity and know what you're what you're turning up for, what your teams are supposed to be doing, the offering that you're putting out there, as Connor said, understand your guests, what they're after. I think the first 5 years of our experience of Trullo, my version of it is that trial and testing the things that we were testing was absolutely necessary to find out exactly what we're trying to, what the food offering was. And albeit it was quite painful, it was also a lot of fun along the way, but that was youthful and it was important to do that. But then when we got to 5 years, we knew who we were. And I think 5 years in restaurant years, as you alluded to earlier, is a long time. So you can then start to feel a bit of confidence with that without getting complacent. And once you've got that and you've got loyal customers coming, and especially in this city, it's tough to run a restaurant here. So when you get to that point, believe in what you're doing. And of course, you've got to evolve in certain ways, but stay in your lane. And if you stick true to that, and assuming it's something that's still relevant and people still want, then that will serve you well to get to another milestone, 10 years, or in our case now 15. So that would be something that I would recommend to people.
Well, I suppose just as a neat little wrapper, what about the future? You got another 15 years into you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we do.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think, Con?
Yeah, mate, I'd like to take the Trullo brand on tour for a little bit, you know. So, yeah, it takes quite a while to get some confidence in the brand in the restaurant, certainly for myself. But, you know, I'd like to do some fun collaborations with, you know, probably spend more time in Italy and experience, you know, why we kind of run Italian restaurants. That would be a huge goal of mine. Yeah, just keep working together and, you know, fighting the good fight, really.
I'm biased, but Trullo is up there in my top 3 restaurants of the world. And going to sit in there and have a lunch or a dinner, have the hustle and the bustle, the noises of the buses out the front, you know, the chaos that goes on. But the service and the food is, you know, it's still like really up there. And the idea that that's going to be there still in 15 years' time, I really hope it is, because it brings so much joy to so many people. And I think one of the reasons why it has lasted as long as it has done, apart from what we've been talking about, is that we all genuinely still believe in this, that we are creating a space for people to have their happy time. And if people are going to choose to come and spend their disposable income with us, we've really got to honour that. And that is an awesome way to earn a living. And I don't think that, you know, we've never felt, or I'm speaking for the 3 of us, but I think we all believe in that, you know, sort of that approach. And I don't think that's fading anytime soon. So the idea to continue doing that for another 15 years in that space would be an amazing thing.
I think as well, no one asked this question in France or in Italy or in Spain, whether a famous trattoria is still going to be there in 15 years. Of course it's going to be there. You know what I mean? Like, what, you're going to knock the building down? And I think maybe one of the things that's happened a lot in the last 15 years, there's been so much innovation, so many different brands have come in and they've done their thing and then they've moved on. Certainly for me, I feel that it should be there until they knock the building down. I mean, like, that's our job, is to make sure that it, you know, it stays a sustainable and relevant business. You know, when a restaurant that's good closes in your neighborhood, it's like someone dying. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing. You know, we have people who got engaged in the restaurant, had their first year anniversary. Where are they going to go? You can't close. And there is that funny thing in a restaurant like Trullo where there's an obligation. You know, that's part of the contract we have. And, I mean, the people who have come through that restaurant where it was their first job and, you know, that flame was lit for them there, they went on and then they've gone to other things. I mean, you could fill a huge space with those people. And I think that's probably the proudest achievement. Certainly these 2, amazing, phenomenal chefs. But that is probably, for me, their greatest achievement is that sort of legacy and the alumni of Trullo. And, you know, hopefully that's still in its early stages. So, yeah, I think that's the thing I'm sort of most excited about.
Tim Siaratan, Conor Gadd and Jordan Frieda there. This is the menu. Next, we head to Finland. Plenty of restaurants around the world are focusing on exploring and rethinking the traditional recipes of their heritage, and the same is true in this Nordic nation. Restaurant Finjavel has made a name for itself by rediscovering long-forgotten local dishes and offering modern reinterpretations of well-known Finnish classics, such as the beloved Karelian pie, a rice pudding-filled pasty. Here, Finjavel's owner and head chef Henry Allen shows Monocle's Helsinki correspondent Petri Burtsoff how the restaurant prepares its own version of another time-honoured dish, the 17th century potato porridge.
This is one of those dishes that really took Finland through the very hard times where there wasn't much to eat for the people, but we always have had one of the best potatoes in the world, because we are the most northest agricultural country in the whole world. And also our long summer nights, it really produces super top quality potatoes. So this is not going to be exactly like in 17th century or 18th century. Basically, I'm going to make a kind of foam out of the potato, adding a bit of the old spices from the time to it. Also served like foamy texture of the potato with the fresh new potato, because now it's the peak season starting for the new potatoes. First, we start with the making the potato the base, as you call, and I'm using here as a poikula potato, which is from north, from Lapland mostly, also in all region. It gives really smooth, super smooth and sweet texture for it. So I'm gonna add just a bit of butter in the pot. And then we add the potatoes here. But don't brown them. That's the trick. If you brown them, they start to. It's more like barbecue sauce after then. So you have to be gentle and sweat it out. Then I also add just a bit of leek, the white part of leek, and this gives a nice sweetness to it. Then a bit more butter. So I would say here's 250 grams of potato and 50 grams of butter. Okay, then cream, a lot of cream. So it doesn't need much of the potatoes. We're gonna really add like maybe 3 times amount of the kilograms of the cream as we have the potato. Okay, now we let them cook, and to get some spices, I have one Finnish spices. I have the bay leaf, allspice, and white pepper. Just gonna take here some of cloth so I can wrap the spices in the cloth, make kind of like bouquet garni. Just to get a bit out the flavors. And now I'm gonna serve this today with böckling. And this is from Archipelago, so it's smoked Baltic herring. You don't clean them, so you don't gut them. So these have everything inside, but it's so small that it doesn't matter. After that, you smoke them on a very low heat, long time. It's not that. So I'm gonna just clean a bit the fish for you. I like to take the bone off because many of our foreign customers maybe don't know the anatomy of the fish, so it's much nicer to enjoy them. Let's see what the potatoes are saying. All right, puikula. Yeah, it's about, I would say, 4 minutes approximately, and these are done. I'm gonna add just a bit water in this space, just a bit water. Just it doesn't get too fatty, you know, not much. Let's see, these are starting to be done. Okay, then I take the blender, and now we're gonna just mix the whole thing. Just gonna take the spices off, everything like that. Potatoes and the cream and a bit water also. Okay, then we're gonna add just a bit salt. Let's taste. Now it should be very shiny and elastic. As you can see, super shiny. So then I'm gonna take a cream chiffon, so the bottle that we can then blow it for to be like foam. I'm gonna fill it like maybe halfway, like that. So now the foam is very hot. We're gonna just heat a bit of the whole potatoes. So I just heat a bit potato, and on the top I have here.
What's that?
Crispy skin made out of the potato starch. So basically fresh potatoes are cooked couple minutes, but that short time that they still have the starch in the potato. Then we mix it, spread it, let it dry, like it looks like a bit like thin glass. And then we just gently dip them in the melted butter or oil to make it shine. And this is basically, this dish have potatoes in like 3 different ways. So foam, whole, and then the kind of potato glass. Potato in the, we have this kind of cup on this plate. Then we take the fish, we put pickling there on the plate. So now there's the fish, and then I have a bit of the roll, and then I have the espuma, the foam. Just try it a bit, looks perfect. Oh yeah. Okay. Then I'm just gonna spread the foam so it will cover the whole dish. Like that. We're gonna have some dried dill here. And I'm just gonna take it on a bit on the glass, on the potato glass, sprinkle it. And that's it.
Wow, it looks like a work of art on this beautiful wooden plate.
This is it. Perunavelli, as we call it.
Wow,
How does it taste?
amazing. Really, really. It's a taste I remember from my childhood. I think I had it a couple of times. But yeah, in a very modern form. I absolutely love this. Such clean, simple flavors.
Yeah, there's nothing. There's a bit smokiness from the fish, sweetness from the potato, a bit of the old spices that your grandma maybe used to use. That's it. Like super simple archipelago style, food.
Thanks, Petri. This is the menu. Now it's time for the week's top food and drink headlines. Here is Monocle's Henry King.
Ferrero is set to take over WK Kellogg, the cereals giant known for its cornflakes, Rice Krispies and Fruit Loops. The privately held Italian chocolate company will acquire the American cereal conglomerate in a deal worth €2.65 billion. It's the latest move from executive chairman Giovanni Ferrero, Italy's wealthiest person, following a decade of major US acquisitions, including ice cream maker Wells and Nestlé's US candy division. In Dubai, a restaurant opening in September will feature a twist, a menu designed by an AI named Chef Ayman. Food will still be made by the traditional human, but a culinary large language model will be the source of inspiration for prototype dishes served at Wuhu, in the desert metropolis. Staying with restaurants, one of LA's oldest, Cole's French Dip, is closing permanently after 117 years of serving customers. Located in Los Angeles' historic Pacific Electric building, Cole's gained fame through their famous French dip sandwich, served hot with thinly sliced roast beef. For regulars and locals, there is still time to visit, with the iconic site set to close on August 3rd. Those are the week's food and drink headlines. Now back to Chiara.
Thanks, Henry. You're listening to The Menu. And now to Bordeaux in southwestern France. Brits famously love to visit its chateaux and taste its bottles today, but the bond between this renowned winemaking region and Britain goes back many centuries. The trade of wine between the two began in the 12th century when England ruled the entire Aquitaine region. The privileges stipulated by the Royal Charter may have ended now, but the English penchant for Bordeaux wine remains. On a recent visit to Saint Émilion, contributor Tamara Thiessen explored the history of this tight relationship while walking the cobblestone streets of this picturesque town. She brings us this report.
It may surprise you or not. The Brits have rather an historic attachment to Bordeaux wines, particularly the Merlots and Cabernet Francs of Saint Émilion, the oldest wine-producing appellation in the Bordeaux region, with a history dating back to the ancient Romans. It is a UNESCO-recognised fact that the penchant for a drop of red from the famous French winemaking region is a matter of medieval tastes. The jurisdiction of Saint Émilion refers to an historical and cultural area granted special status during the period of English rule in the 12th century, the organisation says. This was later recognised as a UNESCO World Heritage Site for its unique viticultural landscapes. It's on a visit to 15th century Château Coutet, one of Saint-Émilion's Grand Cru wine estates, family-owned for over 4 centuries, that my guide Emmeline makes a surprise revelation about the history of the famous jurisdiction. It began with the marriage of the former Queen of France, Eleanor of Aquitaine, to Henry II of England in 1152. As Queen of England, her lands in France, the Duchy of Aquitaine, became part of the English kingdom. It was the son of the royal couple, King John Lackland, who granted the special status of a jurisdiction to Saint-Émilion in 1199. This gave privileges to the local noblesse, which led to a flourishing wine trade with England. According to Émilion, the move was a bit of a sweetener to his power over the region. As Duke of the Aquitaine, he displayed a keen interest in Saint Émilion and its wines, and where they ended up.
Apparently he wasn't very respected, so he offered privileges, gifts to be appreciated. And he created the Girard, a brotherhood consisting uniquely of men belonging to Saint Émilion's nobility, who had the right to do what they want without asking authorization from the church or even the king. And their main interest was to safeguard and promote the wines of Saint Émilion. This sparked jealousies, so 90 years later King Edward I widened the jurisdiction to its current 7,847 hectares, to include 7 neighbouring villages. In exchange for the full liberties, they had to offer wine, claret, to the English. We have had vines since the Romans in the 2nd century, but the 12th century was a turning point, because we found in the English the ideal client. First of all, with the royal court, then all the English wanted the wines from Bordeaux and Saint Émilion.
So the English packing up their cars with bootloads of bottles of wine and heading back over La Manche, the Channel, for some hearty drinking sessions is nothing new. Émilion says they were behind the development of the international market for Bordeaux wines, turning gradually from a trickle to a flood, and the Brits' steady clientele has cemented Saint Émilion's wine fame ever since, thanks to this historic wine territory that was created centuries ago.
And it was the best clientele we could have hoped for. Sadly, it came to a halt with the end of the 100 Years' War in 1453, and we became French again. And we lost the English clientele. But yes, we have them back now, because it's a love I think no one can live without. Saint Émilion's wine and the English and Saint Émilion's wine.
Later, wandering around the pretty cobblestone town drenched in wine history, I learned that the British had a curious knock-on effect on shaping the enduring picture postcard look of Saint Émilion. The characteristic tertre, the hilly streets, were built using small cobbles the English ships used as ballast on the way over. These were left behind, Émilion tells me, and later used to create the unique landscape of the village.
So we were just talking about the jurisdiction, the English who came to fetch our wines under that in exchange for the privileges. But it was them who had to come and get it. And to avoid capsizing, they loaded their boats with stones. And when they arrived here, they left no stones in the port and then left again with the barrels of wine. And they no longer needed the ballast because the barrels served as them. So the Saint Émilionnais recuperated the stones left by the English to build the streets. It's what we call here tertre, the hills of the small mountain of the Saint Émilion we're standing on.
The English cobblestones were used to link the lower village to the upper village in the 12th century and to pave the way to Saint Émilion's most famous site, the Église monolith, whose bell tower has spectacular views over the vineyards, enjoyed after climbing all 196 steps. This was the hub of the new town, says Émilion, and also home to the village marketplace.
So this street is called the Rue du Tertre de la Tente, the street that goes to the top of the hillock and to the marketplace. There are several such hilly streets here, but in this case the Tente refers to the market stall coverings, and the market square has always been the heart of the town, the commercial heart, the geographic heart, between the lower and the upper town, the historic heart, because we will soon discover the small grotto nearby. And finally, the religious heart, because the first church is here, the monolithic church, from the Greek mono, one, and lithos, stone, one stone. A church that wasn't constructed from the ground up, but carved out of the limestone bedrock, not in the mountain, but in this pretty little hill from which they tunnelled from the top to the bottom, an underground church.
Just to add a nice twist to the tale of the English presence in Bordeaux and the close ties forged in wine, when Londoner Sally Evans decided to quit the city and her corporate life in Paris and establish a boutique winery in Bordeaux a few years ago, she baptised it Chateau George VII, with the grandson of King Charles in mind. Several months after the coronation of King Charles III and his wife Camilla in 2023, the pair wrapped up their sojourn in France with a tour of some famous wine estates. Sally's was not among them. Nonetheless, continuing the French-English wine trade history, 1/3 of her annual production of some 15,000 bottles of red is sold back home in England.
I came to the region, I loved the region, and I said, well, it's here I really want to establish a wine project.
Today, England is still Bordeaux's third biggest market after the US and China, and the Brits' place in Bordeaux's wine history will never be forgotten. There are vestiges everywhere that leave an inextricable aftertaste. An hour's drive away in the Monocle, the vineyards and wines of Château d'Angloudet were founded in 1883 by Englishman Peter Sichel, who went there to set up a wine buying office. Today, the Maison Sichel is run by his 5 French-born great-great-grandsons. Standing among the wine barrels in the cellars of the chateau, Alain Sichel, also president of the Bordeaux Wine Council, says wine destined for England was historically transported in enormous barrels, tonneaux or ton, giving rise to the unit of measurement still used today to calculate a ship's carrying capacity.
Ça fait référence au tonneau de vin qui était exporté.
This refers to the wine barrel, which was exported from Bordeaux to England. At that time, a barrel was 900 litres, but to cope with the demand, the 225-litre Bordeaux barrel was invented. And these are measurements that date back to the 12th to 13th century. Today, we export 150,000 hectolitres of wine to England.
To the king!
To the king!
Already in the 14th century, 900,000 hectolitres, that's 90 million litres of wine from southwest France, was sold in London, the vigneron says. In the end, things haven't changed much. Despite a slight slump in French wine shipments to the UK in 2023, old grape habits, it seems, die hard. In Bordeaux for Monocle Radio, I'm Tamara Tyson. Santé!
Thanks, Tamara. And that's all for this edition of The Menu. Remember that we are back with a new episode again on Friday at 2000 London time. That's at midday in San Francisco. Also, don't forget to tune into our spin-off show Food Neighbourhoods for a tour of some of the world's tastiest destinations. I am Chiara Rimella. This programme was produced by Monica Lillis and our sound engineer was Phil Simons. Thanks for listening and until next week.